Hey, Colt, why don't you, if you're gonna be in there, be woo-hoo and close your door, Peanut.
Well,
Hold
hello,
on.
good morning. Good morning.
Go close the door. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
How's it going, everybody?
Oh, it's different. It's a little different. Having everybody be at home. How's it going for you guys?
It's been interesting. I will say that while I've been someone that's worked remotely for about 15 years, I've worked remotely by myself. I haven't had someone else to share my remote world with. So it's been a little interesting. Although I will say that I do love having Rob around more, even though ironically, we don't see each other very much. I kind of stay in my little world and come out every once in a while to get a snack or a cup of coffee while he's working in his.
Do the wave drive by. Bye. We do the I love you sign in our house.
Well, I get kind of tunnel vision when I get working. So for me, it's like I get like super focused, and this is kind of a bigger issue for us in general too, in that I sometimes forget small tasks because I'm so focused on the tasks that are in front of me. That so, for example, Amy's like, "Hey, don't forget to pay the water bill," for example, and I'm like, "Yeah, all right, cool, I got it." And then like I forget to pay it for like a month, and I'm like, "Did you pay the water bill?" "Yeah, totally. Yeah, I paid the water bill." "So sure." Yeah, so that's my challenge. So the nice part about being home is I know her presence is here. And I like when she kind of walks by and does, gets her coffee. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm working from home. That's kind of cool. So if there is a cool part, that's it. The other part is the distance challenge. So I do a radio show, microphone here, but my partner's also working from home. He's working from his house. So that creates two challenges. Number one, we used to, you normally have face-to-face interaction, but you can't do that now. So you have to do it like this on a video and try to read each other's expressions, when he's going to wrap up what he's saying, when I'm going to wrap up what I'm saying. But there's a distance that creates a delay because we're obviously broadcasting on the internet. So he sends his signal from his house to the station sends it back to me. So there's like a second.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that creates a little bit of a challenge. But
and I have this little guy.
Uh-huh. Hey, Colt.
That handsome fella.
Oh, punch, punch, punch.
Oh, always the punches.
Ah.
Yeah, so how's that going?
So usually I kind of, so as a mom, I've learned kind of the hard way that, okay, you get announcements like I'm going to go poop. I've that the more I can anticipate the needs of my family first and kind of like prep them for that. Some things like a momentary poop that's happening. That's a surprise. But what I know is that my 5-year-old is always going to want snacks. So before I get on a call or I go to do recording videos, I set out a spread of snacks, full water bottle, like, literally I say like 5 different kinds of snacks. Like this is like charcuterie board overload. And the iPad is there, and I tell him, like, if it's an emergency, you can get me. But otherwise, like, do your thing. And I mean, I'll be honest, I do a little bit of the same with my husband. Like, I make sure that he has food and water and, that he's set. And then that way it frees me up for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because you got to plan for your meeting and you got to plan for that too. So you have to sort of plan together but separately. So you have to have two parts of your brain working at the same time to go, okay, I need to take care. Hubby, here you go. And then son, here you go. And then I got to prepare for this meeting or create this program that you're creating or whatever, which is an interesting challenge.
It literally, like, my prep starts about an hour before my real work, because not only do I have to make sure that I have like clothes on and not pajamas, truth be told, shoes, you know, good thing about the Zoom is no shoes really needed, which is my jam.
You know.
But yeah, about an hour beforehand, which, you know, like when it was just me, I could just like grab and go, but it's not. So yeah, the prep starts much farther in advance, and then making sure my technology is set up, because I went to go do something the other day and batteries were all dead. So, you know, gotta look at all that too. So Rob, how's it been with the delay? Do you also find like that just energetically, like, because I know you're seeing your co-host's face, but does it still feel like energetically is harder to connect when you're not in the same room?
Well, we have an advantage with that because I've known Mike for 12 years, my co-host, so we kind of know each other well enough to be able to read that. Whereas if we were new and that we just put the show together and we didn't know each other, it would be a massive challenge. So,
Yeah.
And we kind of do prep the same way. So we will get on a call. The show starts at 4. So we jump on a Skype or a Zoom or whatever at 1 o'clock and we start talking through our ideas. So I kind of know where he's going and know what he's going to say, and he does the same with me. So we have that advantage. But, you know, I miss the human interaction the most because I'm a people person. I like being around people. I like being social in the real sense. So the show's a little bit different. I'm not going to say it's worse, but that's the part that I missed, that I want to give them I want to give them a handshake, or I want to give them a hug or whatever. That you can't do, and we're encouraged not to do that right now. So that has been a big challenge, not just with Mike, but with just even going to the office and just seeing my people. You know, it's weird. Like you're still working, but you're at home and you don't see anybody. So it doesn't really feel like work in that work, drive to work, drive home from work sense, even though you're still grinding through the workday.
It's true, because there's normally when you go somewhere, and I know Amy, you've been working from home remotely from anywhere where there's a Wi-Fi, signal, but like, how do you, people who are used to going to work, like you drive somewhere and then you get out and you maybe punch in, and then when you're done, like you punch out and you drive back home, and there's that natural transition. Whereas when you're working from home, there's no built-in transition like that.
Yeah, and I would say the thing that has made it a little interesting is, as you can see, Rob is in our sitting room, which was also occasionally my office too. But
right.
now that it's there, there is a little bit of a different energy there, because normally that's our chill space. That's the space that we just hang out in. It's right next to the kitchen. So, usually Rob would come home, we'd have a chat, we'd make dinner, that's where we'd hang out. And now it's been overrun with equipment, and it's not even just the visual piece of it. It's that it does feel like, because Rob does talk show, there's topics that you talk about in the talk show that, I don't know, it feels like there's residue, if you will.
Yeah.
In our chill space, so much so that we haven't really used that space to hang out in. We've purposefully kind of gone to another little room that we have to hang out and chill.
Well, even though my normal recommendation is to have a dedicated workspace, that's not necessarily always available. And I know that for Rob, you need to be right next to that router, which happens to be in your living room. Otherwise, you probably would use, a bedroom. But the truth is that we don't always have that. And I know I learned a lot from living in a New York City apartment for many years, is you maybe have like one space and it has to be everything. So a couple of different ideas I have for you in order to make it feel like, so we're going to create the illusion that like you're either at home or at work, even though you're going to be in the same room. So like I see you have your equipment. I know there's other stuff I can't see, but I can see your microphone. Is when you're done working, is you're going to pack all of that up and like put it in a corner or under a table, or just put it where it's not like still set up. So you're going to like set up every day when you go to work, and you're going to tear it down when you go to work.
Oh, I love that.
And then it's a little bit of extra effort, but then that's your new transition. Instead of driving into the station, is you're setting up your equipment and you're tearing it down, like at the end of a rock gig, right? Also
But
think
could
of
you,
it like,
I mean, with that, could you also almost in a sense kind of treat it like your drive home where maybe you put on the same music or the same
yeah,
station that you've used? So you're naturally connecting to, okay, this is my shift from work to home.
absolutely. Because we know with young children that transitions are incredibly important. And as adults, we forget about that. We're still wired the same way. So like for me, when I would drive to work and back, I used to love to sing to the radio like really loud because nobody else would be in the car with me. So maybe if you do that too, while you're packing up your equipment or setting it up, like belt out a couple tunes and, you know, whatever it is that you would have normally done as that ritual, if you will, going to and from work. I also think that like change your shirt. Like have a, when you get dressed to go to work, like put your work shirt on. And then after you've packed up your equipment and sung your song, like take that work shirt off and change back into your home clothes.
Do you change your shoes too and like throw the shoe to the
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Mr. Rogers style. Why
Exactly. Rob, I think we need to get you a cardigan.
not?
Wouldn't you like to be, yeah, whatever the song is.
Or like I used to work with a guy who wore ties to work. Like he had all these crazy ties. You know, you could put on a crazy tie, or if you normally wear a badge at work, put your badge on, or like your lanyard badge. Put it on when you're at work and take it off. And it's not that you need the badge because you're at home. It could even be in your pocket. But it's like that is telling your brain as well as, you know, tying in that ritual of work. Another thing that I know, like when I worked in an office setting, is I had a cup that I kept at work that was like my mug. And I left it at work. So like change and use your work mug. And then when you're done and you've packed up and you've gone back home, put that work mug in the sink and change to your home mug. And I know it's a little bit of like faking it, but it's going to help you kind of have some of that transition.
Mm-hmm.
Those are awesome. Oh my gosh, those are such great ideas.
Rob,
Yeah, and even though I have, let's see, this laptop I'm talking on, this work laptop, I have 2 other big pieces of equipment. It really probably wouldn't take that long to break it all down. So you're talking maybe 10, 12 minutes. So it's not like it's the end of the world where the drive home takes 20, 25 minutes, depending on the day. So it's still half the time it would normally take for you to drive home. So that's probably 12, 15 minutes maybe on a slow day worth spending. Because then it does, okay, you reel it, you put it away, and then you come back out here and it's not here. It's like never happened. Or it happened and you just came home from work.
yeah. Or, you know, for women, you know, maybe it's taking your makeup off before you get back home, or taking off your bra or putting on sweatpants. Like whatever it is that resonates with you as marking that transition, you know, go ahead and mark it. And if you find that maybe you pack up the equipment and it's too short of a transition, is find something to lengthen it. Like maybe on your drive home you would have like called and talked to your mom, so maybe like step outside and just call your mom real quick and see how she's doing, and then you're done.
And even the act of stepping outside, you know,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a simulation, but it's almost like go out one door and come in the door you normally would come in, you know, if
Yeah.
that's possible.
Well, one day
Front door,
actually,
honey, I'm home.
yeah, that's true. Because we have a front patio at our house. So one day I was after work, I'm like, because, you know, all we've been talking about is COVID-19. So it can be a bit overwhelming. Like, so I went out and I had flip-flops on and I just took them off and I just stood there for like 5 minutes. Then I came back in. I was like, all right, I feel better. I grounded myself and now I'm ready to go back home. So if I do that, pack up the stuff, put it away, go outside, stand there for a couple minutes, and be like, all right, feeling like a new man.
And I know, Rob, you had mentioned on one of our past calls that you missed being in your car.
Yes.
So could you like just go out to your car for a minute and then like close the car door and like walk in like you would have come in as part of the transition?
Yeah, why not? Driving around the loop in the neighborhood real quick if I wanted to. Just get that sense of, you know,
That's a good
cars
idea.
are freedom in a lot of ways. Like when you turn 16, you get your license, you're like, I am free. I could go places. I don't have to rely on my mother or my father to drive me, or my grandfather or whatever. So maybe that's a sense of it too, is there's a little bit of, you get this cool feeling that you can travel 20 miles to work in 20 minutes. Like, how cool of an invention is this, and how much better has it made our lives? Because we don't have to live down the street from where you work. So you have this separation, but now you don't have that separation, and also that sense of freedom, a sense of movement, which is so associated with freedom, is not there anymore. So even if it was like, oh yeah, because I think I've been here in Arizona where Amy and I live and Sierra used to live, we've been under stay-at-home orders. I think this is our 3rd week. I've been in my car twice.
Yeah.
Where normally I'm in the car at least 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And
you
most
love
of
your
the time,
car.
say again?
I was saying you love your car too.
I do.
So
Yeah.
Fun to drive.
you need to give Optimus Prime some love.
Mm-hmm. That's what we named my car.
But you know what? I
Lemonade.
think that that's so key because, you know, it's as silly as it might sound to go out of your house, get in your car, whether you sit there for a couple minutes or you take a spin around the block, you know, those rituals are important.
Yes.
And, you know, sometimes we forget how much we rely on them for our peace of mind. So, and especially when you're working from home, continuing that ritual, whether it's just going outside and coming back in, or going outside and coming in another door, or going in your car and something. I think those are all wonderful ideas, Sierra, that can help people.
Yeah. I would say try all of them and see which ones resonate with you. And if they all resonate with you, do them all. If you find like one thing is really key, like, okay, changing the shirt really helps me, but I don't really want to pack up the gear all the time. I mean, just kind of feel it out. I'd say give it like a good 2 tries before you decide. Listen to how you're feeling. And then if it helps you to remember, make yourself a little sticky note of like the order, like pack up, change shirt, change cups, walk to car, blah, blah, blah. Like literally just make yourself a sticky until it becomes your new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can ditch the sticky note when it's second nature.
Yeah.
And then hopefully by then it's time to go back to real work.
You never know. But
You never know.
We're not in control of that. So
Exactly.
we've learned from Stoicism that the only things we have control over are our actions and reactions. We are not in control of how long the lockdown goes on. You're not in control of how long your station has you working remotely. The only thing you can control is your little bubble and how you act. You can't even control how your wife responds.
Yep.
So
Trust me, I know.
Yeah. So all you can do is the things that you can do and then be ready to modify. So you might find some of these ideas work for a week or 2 and then they start not working. So you might have to change it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then just change your sticky note.
Yeah. I love that. I think those are all awesome.
Cool. So
I look forward to hearing how it goes, Rob. We'll report back in our next call.
yeah, report back. Honest report. So
Will
Amy,
do.
how are you?
You know, I've been okay. Like I said, the energetic piece that we just talked about, that's been a little bit of a tough transition because I'm very much used to being master of this home between 10 a.m. and 7:30. So I'm having to learn how to share my space a little bit more.
You know, and I think that, you know, for you guys in your house, you're going to have to kind of keep checking back in with each other and see where you need to modify. I always say, like, pick something that's already a natural transition or a natural, like, meetup time. For families, I think dinner is always, whatever meal you eat together. I shouldn't say dinner because it depends on the family. But whatever meal or time you have that you're together, that's a really good time to just sort of ask an open-ended question like, how's this all working for you? Or what do we need to shift? And then here's the hard part, is you have to ask, and then you have to shut up and actually like listen.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Key part of communication is listening and actually listening, not tuning out, not getting bored, not fidgeting, not looking at your phone. What's on Netflix? The huge part, because there's huge lessons to be learned in listening. Huge lessons, the most important ones.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they always say, and this is true, leaders talk less and listen more.
Yep.
You don't have to, filibuster. Bad strategy.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes we, instead of actually listening fully through, is then we start formulating what our response is going to be.
Yeah.
Because God forbid there be a pause in between anything. And then we often miss the rest of the message.
That actually is super relevant for what I do with a partner on talk radio, in that, so Mike will be making a point and I'll think of something based on what he says, but I have to be disciplined to keep listening. And I have to trust that I already had the thought. It'll come back to me at the right time. So I can let that one go and keep listening, because then I can get the next thought and that thought will come back. Maybe it's not in that immediate moment. Maybe it's tomorrow, but I've already had the thought. So you have to trust in yourself and to trust in your mind that the thought's not going to go away. And once you have that trust in yourself, you can stay listening a little bit easier, because oftentimes, oh, this is such a great point. You already thought the great point. You might think of something even better if you give yourself the chance to keep listening.
Right.
So
Or to allow the other person to keep
discipline.
talking.
What's that, Amy? Sorry.
Sorry, I just broke the rule. I thought you were done. I was saying, or allow the other person to keep talking. Because yeah, and I think that's true not only just for what you do, Rob, but I mean what we're doing here, what so many people have done prior to as well as during this period, is when you do have a group meeting of any kind, understanding how you can be a good meeting attendee and meeting participant. And participant doesn't mean you're always talking.
A tool that I learned many years ago from general manager at the Fairmont, Jack Miller, is that wherever he went, he always had, even if it was small, some sort of a notebook. And when somebody was talking, either jotting down something that person said that he wanted to come back to, or if he had this great idea but it wasn't a good time to interrupt it, is he would actually just write it down. And you're literally just writing down. You can still kind of do the eye contact like this, and then set it aside and keep that straight up eye contact, and then it's there for later, and it's not lost in the ether. You can come back to it if it's something you wrote down that person said that you want to reframe. Then you've got it written down exactly as they said it.
And I think there's a key to that too, Sierra, thinking about your prefacing with behavior as well. So you may have a notebook, or you may, I'm sure we've all been in meetings or been in some sort of interaction where there's more than one person, been in a meeting or whatever, where someone has their phone or someone has their laptop, and you see them typing, doing this, doing that, and you get annoyed because you think they're not paying attention.
Right.
And that's how you can immediately interpret what their behavior is. But if, as the person who's doing that, if you actually preface, and Rob, I'm talking to you when I say this too, because I get agitated when I see you on your phone. I'm like, what are you doing? If you're like, hey, do you mind if I just take some notes? I'm gonna take some notes on my phone, or I'm gonna take some notes on my laptop, or I'm gonna jot it down. So that way people know that you are actually listening. You're not doing something else while they're speaking.
Yes, and I think there's nothing wrong with literally, you're going to be Captain Obvious. You're going to say, I'm going to write down something that I want to remember that you are saying, so that I can stay engaged in what you're saying right now. You can absolutely say that. Jack Miller did that. I use that technique sometimes, especially if it's with somebody new that doesn't know what I'm doing. Like, what are they doing? Are they scribbling? Are they like writing dirty things about me? Like, what is it? No, I'm telling you, I'm going to write that down because I want to remember it.
Yeah. And it's such a simple thing, but it's so powerful, because if not, it's everybody up to their own interpretation. And a lot of time interpretation is not quite right. Your assumptions aren't usually correct.
Right. Well, and then there's the whole other part of engagement too. So in this time in 2020, where we are so distracted, you really have to focus on how engaging you are as a speaker. How do you capture people's attention? How are you inflecting your voice? What are you saying to them? Are you using words that are too big for the room, in other words? Or, there's all kinds of different things you got to think about that are different than they were 15 years ago as a speaker, because there might be something more entertaining on Facebook that I can go to in 2 clicks of a button that takes me 2 seconds. And the average attention span, I think, is down to about 8 seconds or something like that. So but as a speaker, you have to keep that in mind, whether you're running a meeting, whether we're doing one of these calls, because my brain has already changed to be distracted. So you have to be engaging enough where I don't give a shit what is on my phone, which is a whole nother challenge in and of itself. But that comes down to me, it's preparation. You can't just wing it anymore. You have to know what's the message, especially like this. So to go back to Sierra's point, to add on to it when it comes to communication, is there's a massive difference between communicating like this and communicating face-to-face, because we're making eye contact, but I'm trying to look at both of you and my eyes go to see, because the way I'm looking at it, I'm here in the top right, Sierra's on the top left, Amy's on the bottom. So my eyes are going here, 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 here. So it's a little bit different, because if I had both of you in a room, I could just look at you and I feel your presence. I can't feel your presence. So I have to engage in a different way. So I have to be prepared. And I have to know that what I could normally say to you in, let's say, 16 words, I should probably say in 10, because we're communicating this way, because there's less leeway, there's less wiggle room, because there's no face-to-face interaction. So at least that's how I approach these calls, is what am I going to say? How quickly am I going to say it? And if I think I can get it down to something this long, I probably can get it down to something this long.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, and
the
I think
quicker
even
you say
going,
these, more engaged people typically are. Sorry, Amy.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, and I think, going back to the distraction piece, now that people are working from home, as we talked about at the top of the call, I mean, there's a whole new slew of distractions beyond your phone or your coworkers. Now
King.
Now you have little people who need snacks or have to go to the bathroom, or you have dogs or whatever, husbands, whatever's happening. It's above and beyond that. So it's being able to, I think, to your point, prepare for your meetings well, just like you said, both preparation for the meeting, as being in the meeting, but also all the things that have to happen while you're in the meeting externally. Sierra, like, charcuterie picnic, snacks, things to do, so that way you can be fully present in the meeting as much as you can, understanding. And I would say at this point, that's where we just have to give everybody a little bit of grace and leeway here to understand that we can't expect people to necessarily always be able to participate the same way they would if they were in the office, because of these other things. We would love to say, go in a room, shut the door, tell everybody to be quiet and leave you alone. But the reality is that's not always going to happen. So we need to be a little bit more forgiving, I think, at this stage.
Well, and also, if you're a filibusterer, which is one type of communicator, not a good time to be a filibusterer. This is a time for self-examining if you just talk and talk and talk and talk, because no one is listening to you.
That's where as the moderator of the meeting, that's why you have that mute button.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. But look,
like,
and you've talked to me about this, Amy. You've been on meetings where someone's filibustering and you're texting someone else in the meeting and going, saying whatever, or making having a different conversation. And as a
I will say, I have also been a filibusterer as well. So I'm sure that in that same meeting, when I was speaking, someone was like, her again, why? So I understand.
Again, you can't control that. But you can control how effective you are speaking to the group. Mm-hmm. And the more people are going to be distracted. So how are you really honing in your message?
Well, and I think Amy has already in her curriculum a planned segment about when to offload things, like when can you take this into an email that goes to the appropriate people? When can this be taken into a separate chat room or a separate, offshoot meeting, breakout room, if you will? I think that's another thing that's, especially because we're all now doing this remotely, is how do you know when to call it and say, okay, we're getting off the track, or our time is running short on this actual Zoom. Let's rethink about how we can complete the task. And maybe it's an email, maybe it's a a text thread. I don't know. There's a million different
Mhm.
ways to keep accountable. Like shared checklists as well that you can share. Um, there's so much out there now. It's just how do you know what to use when? And like social media, I know you guys have talked a lot about like what avenues are appropriate for what type of content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not all communication channels are created equal. They each have a very specific purpose and intended outcome or use. And once you get really clear on that, unfortunately, we've muddied the water so much that it's going to take a little bit of work to try to alkalize it a little bit, or get it back to zero if we can. But there certainly are things that you can mindfully be aware of and try to implement. And even if it starts with just you and one other person, or you and just your team, if you start to implement that, you can eventually have influence over, other areas and the ways in which they communicate, because you're essentially, through what you're doing, you're kind of training them in the desired behavior that you would like to have as well with your interactions.
Yeah,
So,
it's that whole golden rule, like treat others how you want to be treated.
mm-hmm.
So if you lead by example and say like, okay, I know that we have a short amount of time, so let's not chit chat, let's not bullshit. I'm not going to use sarcasm. I'm just going to tell it like it is, and then we're going to have an honest back and forth conversation about this. And then the more that you do that with people, it's like you're teaching them, okay, this is what's acceptable and this is what's not. And sometimes you have to actually draw a boundary and say, you know what, you doing this passive aggressive thing, like that's not working for me. We need to like buckle down and actually just focus on what needs to get done. So let's just say it and just tell it like it is.
And that's really where, as part of what we're working on, Sierra, both you individually and then myself with teams and organizations, is having those blueprints, really getting really clear and defining what your rules are for the way that you are going to show up and interact with each other. It's something, there's a reason why there's been charters and peace treaties. They don't just shake on like, all right, we're good, so we're gonna be cool with each other, right? Yeah, all right, totally. No, they write it down, they proclaim it, they sign it, they adhere to it as much as possible. They hold each other accountable when they're not, but they have that piece of paper, their declaration of intent. They have that piece of paper that says, this is what we believe, this is how we're going to behave, this is how we're going to interact and show up as ourselves, as teams, as an organization. I think it's so important. So often we write policies, but we don't actually write intentions. And I think those are two very different things. But yeah.
Well,
but
there's a lot to be gained by
go ahead,
being
Rob.
honest, right?
Pardon?
There's a lot to be gained by being honest, so long you can do it in, I'll say, a safe space, even though that word has kind of been corrupted by politics. But the safe space is, I can tell you how I'm feeling as long as I deliver the message the right way, and then you can deliver your truth to me and I accept it. Because that's the huge part about truth telling, is I'm going to accept what you say even if I disagree and not get emotional about it, because I can control, again, getting back to our Stoic principles, I'm going to control how I respond to you. And I would like you to control how you respond to me. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to say and come at you like this. But if I just approach and I say, I really don't like the way you speak to me about this. If you said that to your boss, so look, I want to have an honest conversation with you. It's very demeaning when you speak to me this way. If you have a good boss, they're going to listen to you and go, okay. But if you set the parameters like Amy's talking about, like, we need to have this conversation that stays in this box, and you have whatever signal that you need to have, if you get buy-in on that, your organization is going to be much better and much more effective at every single thing you could possibly think of.
Right. And that's the power, Sierra, that you're teaching, the power of your absolute truth, speaking your absolute truth, having your call to action, having your preface so that way people understand what it is, how you're showing up, what your expectation is, what the desired outcome is that you want to try to achieve. That makes it so much easier in communication, because then it might not completely eliminate, because we are human beings. We do have these primitive brains that naturally fire in certain ways or have certain reactions, but it allows people to understand versus assume. So they can at least get a better feel for where someone is coming from versus assuming what they aren't saying.
Yeah. And there's two things that I always use as a touchstone to keep myself checked with this. The first is, if it's my absolute truth, I'm going to own it and present it only as my own. So, for example, instead of saying, when you speak to me that way, I find it very demeaning, is I might phrase it in the sense of, through my lens, when you speak to me in this way, or if you can provide a specific example, basically hone in on the issue. When you spoke to me that way at that meeting, the way I perceived that was that you did not value my opinion, and I was very upset because I do value your opinion. So in other words, I'm owning what it is that I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I always touch back to is hard on the issue, soft on the person.
Yes,
so
I love that.
I'm not mad at my boss. I'm mad at the action that he did.
Mm-hmm.
I want to address the action that he did. He is not a bad person. That choice might not have been ideal, and that choice might not fly in the future. So it's the issue that you want to stay focused on and not make it the broad thing.
Right. Don't assign more meaning to it than what it is. Yeah.
And if you stew in it, you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Without releasing it, like Sierra's saying, in that effective way. Because otherwise, it's gonna sit in your head for 3 weeks, and it's gonna get stuck in your body somewhere, and it's gonna just be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you might find when you actually take that issue to the boss, he or she might say, I never intended that at all. I was having a crap day.
Mm-hmm.
I never meant for you to, I don't think that at all. And I will try to be more mindful when I give my feedback. And then you can release the fact that it wasn't about you in the first place, but you've addressed it instead of letting it take your point. Yes.
Which again is such a courageous thing to do. And if you can do that, what can't you do? Like, let's be honest. Those are the hardest things to do as a human being is not confront, because that sounds too aggressive, but to actually speak your truth to another human being that you're not really close with.
That vulnerability, right?
Or that you are close with.
Oh,
That's
yeah, sometimes that's harder.
Yeah, well, sometimes it is, but it's varying degrees, right? You're safer just in general principle, typically, if you have a healthy relationship. But there's boundaries you rarely cross with work relationships. And if you can do that and do it effectively, the world is yours.
Amen.
On
I'm
that
just
note,
glad that we have an amazing team here.
mhm.
So we're very fortunate.
We balance each other. It's like we all have the different strengths. It's like the same with the logo, with the 3 lines, the 3 pillars, is that just one of us alone, our ideas would probably kind of be all over the map, but when we have each other to bounce these ideas off and look at it from different angles, it makes us all stronger.
Yeah, we have that sweet spot in the middle. That's
Yep.
Right.
in the middle.
That's where we're going to get you guys, right in the middle.
Right.